Okay, so I thought what I'd do this morning, first of all, is thank the Oxford group for inviting me to come and talk to you. And I thought most importantly, it would be really good to talk about what's gone well. Because actually we're all part of a very complicated system. And this is just a chart which I don't want you to note or write anything about, but just to notice how many different boxes are on that chart that we have to take into consideration that affect us all when we're carrying out the immunisation programmes. And of course we have to have government support, and that includes budgetary funding, and we have to plan. And we have to invest. And investment is not just money. It's the investment that every one of you makes in the national programme in your particular area. And of course, what's most important of all is you. Because you are the people that deliver the service to the people that need it. And I'm going to really just skip through this morning some of the achievements of the last couple of years, in fact, and some of the things that have gone well, and maybe even touch on a couple of things that haven't gone so well. So, this is just incredible. This is a history, if you like, a timeline of our national vaccination programme. And I think the main thing to show there is how much has happened in really what is a relatively very short period historically. And this really is tremendous because we are very privileged in the UK to have a very extensive immunisation programme. But that brings challenges with it. It's challenges for you, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's also challenges for the public. Because one of the, if you like, side effects of our very successful programme is that people have forgotten sometimes why we do it. I think we forget sometimes why we do it. And how many people here have looked after anybody with diphtheria? No. How many people here have looked after anybody with tetanus? A very few hands. How many people have looked after children with measles? More hands than we'd like to see. And so I think what we've got to remember is that many of these diseases are disappearing, and in this country. And what you sometimes come up against is how people worry about the vaccines rather than the diseases that we're preventing. And I just thought I'd show this chart because I like it very much. And the reason I like it very much is this. Because what this is an old chart from '67. This shows where smallpox was endemic, which really is extraordinary because 1967 is not that long ago. And then, 10 years later, there was just this small patch here. And as you all know, smallpox is eradicated. And that is a fantastic achievement. Now, some of you here may have been involved in that. I count myself involved in that I was vaccinated against smallpox when I was a child. I'm that old. So it really is a tremendous achievement. And that shows what immunisation can do. Immunisation can rid the world of disease. And another area where we're trying to make that kind of impact is this. Has anybody ever looked after anybody in one of these? 5 hands. I've only ever seen these when I started training in the basement of the hospital. And we were taken to see it as, I don't know really why we were taken to see it, but we were taken to see it as some kind of historical edifice. And it's really good that we don't see this in this country any longer, partly because of the introduction, mostly rather because of the introduction of the vaccine. And as you know, the world is trying at the moment to establish eradication of polio. And there are only 3 countries now where polio is endemic: Afghanistan, Pakistan and Nigeria. And I think you can probably work out some of the reasons why polio remains endemic in those countries. But there are massive efforts going on all over the world to conquer this disease. But back to your achievements, your, if you like, national achievements. So I'm just going to whiz through these slides because they are fantastic. And what you see here is just what happened when we introduced the hip vaccine. And many of you, some of you will have been involved in that, and you certainly may have been involved in the catch-up programmes, and you see this very gratifying end of the chart, if you like. And it's worth remembering that these lines, and I always remind people of this, represent people, children. And what you see there is the disease going away. The same with Men C. Who here was involved in the Men C campaign, the original one? Loads of you. Brilliant. This is your work. This is what you've done. And this is absolutely fantastic. It's a massive achievement. And again, what you're doing is stopping all these children and some adults from suffering from this really quite very traumatic infection. Another one, you all know what this is about, HPV. We probably have the best HPV programme in the world. And again, that's what you've done. It's absolutely fantastic. And what you see here is the vaccine coverage. I'm not going to go through the chart. And this is what you've done. It's absolutely fantastic. Just look at this, above 90% for the first dose. That really is incredible. And as you know, we've now moved to a 2-dose programme, and it would be really nice to see the 2-dose programme achieving 90% as well. But it is amazing, because this is you preventing cancer. So you just have to think about this. You'll never know the people who you've saved, but you have saved some people. There is no doubt about that. And I mentioned earlier that we have this very complex programme. Now, it gets more complex, it doesn't get less. And that's one of the challenges for you, because you're having to think about all of these issues alongside all of the other work that you do. Some of you may be immunisation focused. I don't know who's in the audience. You may be practice nurses, health visitors, doctors. This may only be part of your work. And this is just the last couple of years. Most of you been involved with this? Yeah? It's felt like a lot of hard work, hasn't it? Yeah. I know. But your hard work makes a massive difference. And so these are just some of the things that we've done, if you like, introduced into the routine programme in the last year. And alongside that, you did this. And this looks as though we've rigged this chart, doesn't it? I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable, but it's true. So alongside all of those extra additions into the programme in the last 2 years, you've also done this. And probably, we hope, brought measles under control, which is fantastic and a massive achievement. Who here knows anybody that's died from measles? Right, I do. Now, the only reason I know somebody who's died from measles was because when I was 5, my entire class, well, in fact, my entire school, it was a small school, got measles. And one of the girls in my class never came back to school. And I didn't find out why until I was about 40. All I knew was that she'd not come back to school. We were talking about MMR, strangely, me and my mum. And she remarked that Shirley had died of measles. So that was this perfectly healthy 5-year-old in a very small school. And in those days, you didn't tend to talk about those things. So there we are. That's the sort of thing you are preventing every time you vaccinate somebody against measles. Rota, one of the things we introduced. Was it worth it? Well, you know how difficult it can be sometimes looking after a child with rota. Look at this. This is one of my favourite graphs. And whenever I'm feeling a bit miserable, I just bring this up on my screen and look at it and think, hurrah, that's what everybody in this room has done. We weren't sure last year because they saw the same effect in Holland without a vaccination programme. But look at this year. One of my colleagues sent that to me, and the only comment he made was, hooray! And it is hooray, it's hooray for you. You've done this. You've given all these children the vaccine, and they're not having diarrhoea and getting dehydrated, and how many? 14,000 of them being hospitalised every year. You've done that. It's fantastic. I mean, oh, this just gives me joy, this chart. And shingles. Who's looked after somebody with post-herpetic neuralgia? Quite a lot of you. It's horrible, isn't it? And it's a really amazing thing that we've been able to introduce this vaccine. And what you can see from this is how the incidence increases with age. Okay? So we introduced it to 70 to 79s. It also has a fatality rate attached as well. So this is a serious problem. And this is what you've done. Okay? It's, again, another amazing achievement. Because you can see by the end of the collection period, you've got over 60%. And that's in the 70-year-old. Oh, I should use my pointer, shouldn't I? So in the 70-year-olds, last year you've got over 60%, and very close with the 79-year-olds. Now what we have got, you can't see on this chart, there's quite a few in-betweens have been vaccinated as well, which was not recommended, but nevertheless seems to be happening. But look at this year. If that trend continues, which I hope it does, it'll be even better. And again, that's all down to you. That's down to your hard work, which is fantastic. And it has been hard work, and we know that for sure. Flu. Sometimes we beat ourselves up over flu, but actually, when you look at us compared with the rest of Europe, we're only second behind the Netherlands. And one of the things about this, well, as UK, there we are, that's us. One of the things that cheers me about this chart is that Netherlands has a downward trend and ours is relatively static, so I'm hoping that maybe this year we'll be first if their downward trend continues, which is a very wicked thing to say. But nevertheless, that's in the older age group, okay? So we know that we achieve around 73, 74% every year with the older age group. I suppose it would be nice to get up to 75, but if you look at uptake, there are interesting things happening, which again, you're all involved in. The first one I wanted to highlight to you is that in the at-risk groups, we're just sitting at around 50%. We're just not pushing that any harder. In pregnant women, in fact, we've done better, if you look at the chart here, and that's really good, but we need to do better still, and I'll say why in a minute. But, as you all know, other people are moving into the flu programme, which is the childhood programme. So sometimes when we're perhaps a little negative about flu, we have to remember how many more hundreds of thousands of people you are vaccinating. Partly because the cohorts are increasing, so you're doing more anyway, but also because we're adding in additional cohorts to the programme. I said about pregnancy, now this is one of the slides that makes me saddest, in fact. And this girl, young lady, Nikki Westgarth, some of you will have seen this slide before, was admitted to hospital suffering from flu, fell into a coma, and she had to have a caesarean section to deliver her baby early. And 4 days after the caesarean section, this young woman died. She hadn't been vaccinated. And one of the saddest things in the rest of the article, because her mother wanted this, if you like, publicised, is that her mum said, 1 week we were shopping for prams, and the next week we were shopping for coffins. And that, to me, is the reason why we need to do a bit better with pregnant women, because we may be able to prevent that. Healthcare workers, what can I say about healthcare workers? Probably a good idea to get vaccinated, even if the vaccine drifts, as it has this year, as you know, but still offers protection against the other strains and may attenuate the effects of the illness. So I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up this time, but if you could internally all put your hands up if you've been vaccinated, it would be a good thing. And I mentioned that we've extended to children. This is what we're doing. We're offering them a nasal vaccine. We're doing it partly in general practice, partly in schools, and occasionally through pharmacists and other routes. So why are we doing this? Oops. Well, if we can vaccinate enough children, and I'm sure somebody else will be talking about this later, then maybe we can affect flu in the whole population positively. And in that way, we may even help those that we're not yet reaching with the vaccine. So it's a really important part of the National Flu Programme. And there are other continuing challenges, which you are all also involved in. And none of this is necessarily straightforward. So there is the pertussis prenatal programme, which is relatively new, but remains a sort of introduction to a national outbreak and remains officially a temporary programme, but we are already seeing signs of effectiveness. You'll all be aware of the ongoing media interest in MB, and I'm sure you'll have had questions from interested parents about that particular vaccine. We've all gone through a great deal of change, and that has probably made our hard work even harder. And it's not just changes in our own health system, there's changes in schools as well, and the way in which schools operate, and that too affects us. Of course, there are still groups that our services fail to reach, and that's another area where I think we have to look at ourselves locally and think, what can we do to make this better? Changes in public attitudes I've already addressed to some extent. We're looking towards measles elimination and polio elimination. That's globally. So, anything else new? Well, there's this. And you'll all be familiar with this, and Andy's going to talk a little bit more about this later, so I'm not going to say very much, but I think the graph says it all. We're seeing this increase in MenW cases, and that's important. So Andy's going to be talking about that, but again, that's another challenge for you. However, I know that everybody in this room is committed to this programme. And everybody in this room, your commitment is making people's lives better and healthier and longer. And that's absolutely tremendous. And sometimes when things get a little hard, and really referring back to a little bit of what Sarah was saying, I sometimes see these sorts of things in the news. And this is about the polio elimination drive in Pakistan. And this is where 4 members of the immunisation team were abducted and shot. And I'm enormously grateful, A, that we in this country don't face that kind of problem, but B, that people in the world are so committed to managing people's health better that they will even go to these extremes of very dangerous places. So, my final slide, and you might think, what on earth is all this about? I have no idea who anybody on this slide is. I don't even know where it is. It's a park somewhere in England. But somewhere in England, and maybe even some of these people, there are people alive there who you will never know, but whose lives you have saved. And that to me is one of the most tremendous things about the job we do, knowing that every day the work you're doing is saving lives. So thank you very much.